Hey guys, Peter here to tell you about the latest from Turmion Kätilöt, Omen 10, out January 13th on Nuclear Blast. This album has 11 tracks, 39 minutes in length, and this is the band's 10th full-length studio record. They are a Finnish industrial metal band. From a design point of view, I like the fluidity that this album offers. It's an album that grows and morphs and evolves with every passing song. It has three different components or three different momentums within it, and you see that growth from one to the next. The opening side of the record, the opening third if you will, is a lot more traditional Turmion Kätilöt, more up-tempo songs that really drive you all the way forward, that carry the listener all the way forward. The middle portion of the record becomes a lot more melancholic. It's still a driven record, but the melancholy of the album, that perhaps is also in that first third of the record, surfaces a lot better. It's a lot easier to detect in that middle portion. In the last third of the album, those two come together. You have that industrial side that pushes you forward, that dance side that makes the tracks feel upbeat, and you also have the melancholy creeping in, creating a very dark and almost sinister atmosphere throughout each and every single song. I like this evolution. I like the fact that the album opens new doors with every single track. It's not a record that's a roller coaster ride. It's a record that moves exponentially, that grows exponentially from the first to the last song. It impacts the playability of the record really well. It makes the album engaging, it makes the album fluid, it makes the album rich and very dynamic. As far as the sound is concerned, this is Turmion Kätilöt. So what you've heard in the previous 9 records, you're going to hear it again on this album. They're not reinventing the wheel. The only thing I feel like it's different on this record, perhaps a little bit more noticeable on this record from previous albums, is that melancholic. It's a lot more melancholic, the sound is a lot more melancholic, the sound is a lot more darker, and the production behind this album defines that sound a lot better. Those two elements are intertwined. The fact that you notice that darkness comes from the production behind the album. This album has great production behind it. It's an album that has all different core elements, that has a lot of different layers, a lot of different sounds, a lot of different experiences, but you're able to see them and digest them really easily from song to song, from more stripped down verses to more chaotic and upbeat choruses, or from verses that have a lot of texture, that have a lot of layers, to choruses that are a little bit more punchy, that are a little bit more direct, a little bit more straightforward. But the production behind it is what allows this record to have that quality of sound, to have those ebbs and flows within songs and then from songs to songs. And that darkness, once again, it only comes through because the production allows it to come through. Sometimes less, sometimes more, but it's an element that really becomes the DNA, or at least the fingerprint of this album, allowing it to separate itself from its predecessors as far as the sound and as far as the atmosphere that that same sound creates. Within that sound, you obviously have to talk about the keys, the synths. It's a huge portion of their sound. It's a huge portion of that industrial vibe, that up-tempo, upbeat vibe that the record has and it has had in previous albums. I like it on this record a lot more than I liked it on the previous record. I feel like it's a little bit more mature, it has more of a sense of purpose, and it adds a lot more than just that upbeat, up-tempo. Sometimes the darkness, the melancholy that you're going to find on this record is coming from elements that you would not expect, like the synths, like the keyboards. As far as the drums are concerned, they are very heavy on this record, but they also offer different perspectives. They have a very warmth sound, they have a lot of substance in them. So this record, for the much as volume as it has, a lot of it is dependent on the sound of the drums and what the drums are doing on every single track. They may not be noticeable or on the forefront all the time, but that volume, that presence, that weight that this record has, a lot of it is dependent on that drum sound. Now, as far as the guitars are concerned, I like the diversity that they offer, offering heaviness, bringing that industrial tip into the songs, mixing really well with the synths, with the keyboards, but also offering some moments of clarity, some stripped down moments, either as opening salvos of songs or intros of songs, if you will, or some important elements within bridges and within the constitution and the structure of individual tracks. So the guitars are not necessarily an element that jumps into the forefront, because this record really allows the keyboards and synths to be in your face with the vocals, but the guitars play a very important role in creating that heavy backdrop that the drums then emphasize. As far as vocal performance is concerned, this album has a lot to give. It's very layered, it's very textured. It offers a lot of movement vocally as you see the movement happening musically as well. vocally it feels like a more mature record than the previous albums. It's more mature in the way the lyrical content impacts the vocal delivery, and it's more mature in the vocal delivery as well. I like the melodies, I like the harmonies, I like the transitions, I like the changes between verses and choruses, and I like the overall vocal performance on this record. It elevates the quality of the album. When you look at this record from the outside all around, like I said, it feels like a darker, more melancholic album, and that comes with maturity, and that puts forward that mature stamp on it. But the vocal performance is at that same page. It allows that maturity to really be simplified in how you perceive it and how you're going to interact with it and in how you're going to digest this album. It's a very strong album from Turmion Kätilöt. I see this record as a step forward from their previous record, and I like the step that they're taking. I like this movement. I like this transition into a darker side of the band. I think there's still a lot of room for them to be creative within it, and I still think they can get a lot darker without losing the fun element that's always been part of their sound and of their sound experience. As far as favorite songs are concerned, I want to start off with Gabriel. Very symphonic, melodic opening, and I really like that element because it brings a little bit of a jovial side to it. It brings a little bit of a sky blue, crystalline aspect to the song. And then it stays a little bit in the backdrop of the track as it moves along. It becomes less noticeable in the verses, a little bit more predominant in the chorus. The chorus is very melodic by nature, it's very powerful, and it's very powerful not just musically but also vocally. It has great layers, and those layers add volume, they add melody. Introducing some female vocals in that chorus, such a nice touch. It increases the size of the vocal range all around. It makes the vocals sound bigger. It makes it feel like there's 1,000 people singing in that chorus, and the melody that you have in the backdrop really elevates and making that chorus extremely epic. And it creates ebbs and flows within the track because you have the verses a little bit more stripped down of that melody, and then you have that melody creeping back in again in the chorus, the same kind of symphonic melody that you had at the opening of the track. So it's a wave that comes in and out as the song progresses. Really interesting track. Next you have Puoli Valtakuntaa, and this song has a very dark guitar opening. Now that dark guitar opening then is replaced by a more upbeat sound. The synths come in and the drums really pair up with those synths in order to create volume. The guitars add heaviness to that same volume, but that dark guitar opening kind of stains the song. It gives it this underlying darkness that it's not always present, that is not always felt, but because you had a taste of it at the opening, it's very hard for you to cleanse your palate of it. It allows also that heaviness that the sound has to transform itself into darkness because of how that opening affects your perception of the song. The chorus feels really big, it's very melodic, it also has some darkness into it, both musically and vocally. A song that alternates perhaps a more upbeat experience in the verses with a more melodic, melancholic vibe in the chorus. Last but not least, Verestä Sokea. The synths sound amazing on this song. They create so many layers. It feels like there are so many layers for you to break down, for you to digest as far as the sound experience of this track is concerned. Allowing the verses to be a little bit more stripped down, more vocally driven, has a very nice impact because then it allows the chorus to be more explosive sound-wise and vocally, feeling two complete detached parts of one single song. The chorus becomes more bombastic because of how stripped down the verses are. The gap between the two, as far as sound and as far as experience, is massive. It has such a beat motion. That chorus is so bigger, larger than life. It has an incredible impact on how you perceive the rest of the song because you go from 0 to 100 between that verse and the chorus. Now it has a spoken word or a spoken word style bridge that bridges the song, that takes the song into its last third, and then closing off once again with that chorus, pre-chorus chorus that has that bombastic, that larger than life nature that is the perfect way to put an exclamation mark at the end of this track. This is it, Turmion Kätilöt, Omen X, their 10th album out on January 13th on Nuclear Blast. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.